To quote Greg DeMarco, what is up? Welcome into the Babyface Heel Podcast. Once again, I am not Greg DeMarco. And once again, she is not Greg DeMarco. We are Patrick O'Dowd and Miranda Morales. We are the new besties. New besties, I guess it's official at this point. Yeah,
everyone.
Miranda,
confetti.
I don't have confetti. I can do this. There's applause. That's always good. But yeah, no, Greg is getting hammered pretty hard not hammered, like he's not drinking right now.
No. He's just really inundated with work. Yes,
he is officially, for those wrestling podcast fans out there, he's become the Bruce Pritchard of the Chairshot Network. That's really what it is. And that reminds me, you are listening to the Babyface Heel Podcast on the Chairshot Radio Network, a part of the Chairshot.com. Got to make sure we pay those proverbial bills. And yeah, Miranda and I are back. We're going to continue to hold that fort. Our friendship will grow. We will have fewer interruptions. Miranda tugging at my heart earlier in our chats, posting Star Wars gifts, trying to keep on the nerdy good side. How are you anyway? Like how has the week been? Like, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been good. One of the interesting things about us, as far as one of a common tie theme that we have, is we all work in the system of higher education in different roles. And so right now I'm in a pretty busy period at work up until probably May 17th. Things will calm down when the actual semester starts on my side. I know Greg's kind of in the same boat. So the next few weeks are busy. But, you know, I got my second vaccination on Friday. So I have to admit, I was super nervous because the first one hurt. It hurt. And it was like someone punched me in the arm so hard. And I had heard so many things about the second shot, but it went swimmingly. You know, it hurt less than the first time around, and I had no side effects. So I was relieved that the second one went so well. So I'm happy. I'm excited. I feel like I can kind of go about in the world again.
That's great. I got my second shot this past Thursday as well. I did not and I got the Pfizer shot.
Me too.
It's like we're meant to be. And so I thought it was really funny because like I was fine. Like got the shot. I was like, oh, I got a shot in my arm. And then this past Thursday, got the shot again, went bowling that night, like was fine. But I too am in a higher ed, and I will be busy until about the 17th as well, just as we wrap up our spring semester and then start our summer sessions. But two of the people who work that I supervise also were getting shots at the same time because there's a vaccination clinic on campus, and we all got appointments. And there's this one person who's a bit of a hypochondriac because like, he goes in before I do. I see them because, you know, they've got everybody with the little curtains or whatever. He's leaving after getting his shot done. I'm there. I get mine. And like, so like the span of like 5 minutes, we've both gotten our shots. And you have to sit. They have to watch you for the 15 minutes to make sure you don't keel over and die. And he starts being like, I'm already lightheaded. Like I'm like, dude, no, you have decided that this is going to impact you.
It's like when you go to WebMD and you just look up one symptom and then you see all these other symptoms and you're like, wait, I think I feel that too. I think I have this. Then it just spirals out of control.
Well, and so I have these four, I oversee desks, right? I've got these 4 desks, and 3 out of the 4 staff members who work these desks got the shot on the same day. One of them was already vaccinated. The next day, all 3 of them were like, oh, the shots really messed me up. I can't go to work. I'm like, bull. Like, the sarcastic ass in me was like, bullshit.
Yes.
Stop it.
How
okay.
How convenient. that all of it. And everyone does have different reactions. Maybe. So I do understand that, but.
And yet I don't believe them. So. I'm just saying, like, I have my doubts, but that's neither here nor there. And we are gonna talk some wrestling today. We're gonna talk about wrestling and hockey intersecting, following up on a story that we talked about. It's like
a dream week for Patrick O'Dowd.
It's a great week.
He gets to co-host with me again, and he gets to talk hockey. And Greg DeMarco isn't here to interrupt him. Like. Whoa! Right, this is like we joked last week about how this, episodes are like just a full Danger Zone card episode. Like I feel like that's literally what will be happening this week.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. I'm totally fine with that. And so's the audience. See, they're still happy.
Audience, yep.
They approve.
Dude, can we say the Thunderdome of the Babyface Heel podcast? Like one of these days we're gonna have a whole Thunderdome-ish. We'll have to come up with its own name, but
we might.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. I'm sorry, what was that?
I was gonna say just the dome. I don't know. I have to come up with some names. We'll come up with some names, but yeah. I mean, we have our own essentially Thunderdome live audience here for tonight's episode of the Babyface Heel podcast. So we're going to be firing on all cylinders tonight.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. We're also going to talk about Kenny Omega's big day this past weekend. It was a big day for Kenny Omega. How much of a big day it was for Impact, that's up for debate. And then this week's Babyface Heel, we're going to the women's side of the house, and we're going to talk about the talented LOL Charlotte wins herself, Charlotte Flair. So great lineup today. Looking forward to it. But before we do all of that, I do think, and I'm going to make sure I say this right, it might be time for you to wind it up. Is that what you say?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It is time to wind it up. Well, for what? Why? Well, it's because it's time for you to go to ProWrestlingTees.com/TheChairShot to get your very own Chairshot t-shirt today. When you go there, you're going to find over 25 different t-shirt designs, all in support of TheChairShot.com. That includes the unofficial official t-shirt of Patrick O'Dowd, #SaveTagTeamWrestling, the Queen of Soft Style shirt, and Everybody Hates Greg. So go to ProWrestlingTees.com. You're going to find some great t-shirts also, like multiple Always Use Your Head t-shirts, the OG Chairshot logo, and of course, shirts in support of other podcasts, including Bandwagon Nerds, A Winner Is You, and much, much more. If you go to ProWrestlingTees.com/TheChairShot, shirts start at $19.99. But if you pay just a little bit more, you can get it in soft style, which is highly recommended, especially as we're getting into the warmer months. You're going to want to be comfortable. And you can even get it in sleeveless soft style. So we have you covered for every season. That's ProWrestlingTees.com/TheChairShot to get your very own t-shirt today.
Sleeveless soft style, huh?
Yep, it's a thing. Like, it's real.
So, like I always joke with on Bandwagon Nerds, I always say you go soft style if you want your giblets to feel good. So now you can have your giblets feel good and take people to the gun show all at once. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, yes. It's summer. It's going to be summertime, gym, can, laundry. So, you gotta have the guns out. Sun's out, guns out.
I also think that maybe now that we're besties, we need a shirt, like a Patrick Miami shirt. Like, in fact, we could just call it the new besties. Like, and we should just.
Oh my gosh! My heart is so warmed up. I think we have little cartoon faces of ourselves.
You get it. You get it. You know exactly. Now we just need somebody who can caricature us so that we can be the new besties. It'll be the hottest tag team in all of podcasting.
Oh, and of course, you got to support the tag teams.
Right.
No other way.
Now, I'm worried that Greg might get the wrong idea because we're also the trios tag team champions of podcasting as well. So, I feel like this is a freebird roulette sort of thing.
It is, but you also have to think about sometimes tag teams, break apart. Think about the New Day. Xavier and Kofi are doing their own thing while Big E is doing his thing.
While Big E is working 12 hours a day at.
Yeah. That's the only good example I have right now, because some other factions are not doing, either they're together or they're completely torn apart. So
right. Well, and I was gonna say, because the only other like pair that ever split out of a trio was the Freebirds, and nobody wants to be Michael P.S. Hayes and Jammin' Jimmy Garvin. Like, nobody wants the Jimmy Garvin role. Like, and not that there's anything wrong with you, Jimmy. Nobody wanted you in the Freebirds. Sorry. No, I didn't
that's
honorary Freebird notwithstanding, like whatevs. Anyway, so put that on. We're gonna put a pin in the shirt. But the new bestie shirt, I feel, is a thing. It's gonna be coming. Let's talk wrestling. Let's talk about this big story that's kind of a turn on the Wednesday Night War,
right?
Because it was announced that Turner Sports is narrowing in on a 7-year contract with the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Miranda, we talked about this on a previous episode of the Babyface Heel Podcast, but why is this news even remotely significant to a wrestling podcast?
Well, other than we have a major NHL fan in you, but really this comes down to one of the initial reasons that was speculated as to why NXT was moving from Wednesday nights to Tuesday nights. And that was with NBC Sports, that channel no longer going to be around, that a lot of their programming was going to be moving to other NBC Universal entities, including USA. At the time, it was speculated that hockey was going to come into the place of Wednesday nights, and that was going to be the reason, why NXT was moving to a different day. And lots of stories about the Wednesday Night Wars and how it ended. For some people soon, some people not soon enough, but that was the big story happening just a month ago. We haven't even had NXT on Tuesdays for very long, but that was just within a month and a half.
Right, and I guess I got to go retract a tweet because I snarkily replied to somebody supporting the Dave Meltzer, like, NXT didn't move for the NHL or whatever. Like, I just remember being like, they had some other reason why NXT moved from Wednesday, and I was like, or it could be because of the whole hockey thing, what they talked about. So, yeah, I guess this does beg the question. Does the speculation that AEW moves to Tuesday happen? Is that real? Could it be? And if so, is the war back on?
Yeah, let's get to the point. Is the war back on? Because going back to what you were saying, a lot of people were, sources, wrestling news sites, and fans in general, especially AEW fans and a little bit of AEW themselves, thought that NXT was moving nights because they no longer wanted to be in competition with AEW. And AEW kept winning the ratings war for most of the actual length of time that they were airing on the same night, and that WWE and specifically USA was no longer interested in having to compete for ratings with the same demographics. That is the narrative that was out there as to the reason why. It does make it a little bit more suspicious in the fact that we all thought it was a done deal with this move as far as NHL coming into that Wednesday time slot. The fact that this comes out now that says it wasn't a done deal does makes you wonder, why did they move and in some ways so suddenly? Because it at least for us, the turnover with the news compared to then when the time change happened was fairly quickly, but it does seem like they didn't solidify that deal. And if they didn't solidify it, why did they move it without solidifying this deal first?
And this is where Greg would play the conspiracy theory music, and we'd get all the we just don't something like that. Yes, I don't know. I don't entirely buy it. I think I could buy it from USA's end. I don't think the WWE cares so much. Like, if AEW moves over to Tuesday, I don't think we're going to see it playing hopscotch unless USA determines it. But was it really that much of a war? Because it's not like the ratings were that far apart.
No.
Right? Like, they were always within points of each other, and and then there was the net, and then there was the internet and streaming like views, and I think those were different, and I think that's where a lot of NXT traffic gets driven. I think it's been interesting how much I miss the old WWE network now, because Peacock sucks. Like, it sucks.
It's different. It's definitely different.
Here's it. I know that I know that they're going to be putting more content on. It's horribly clunky to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it is
horribly clunky to navigate. Like, give me categories. Give me an A to Z listing. Like, I don't understand what. Like, I don't get to pick categories. I go through. It's awkward.
Yeah. Well, and I think going back to NBC Peacock, I feel like they are relying more on their content to sell it than the user-friendly appeal. And I do think Peacock, even though it had been in the works for some time, it doesn't seem like it was in the works as long as some other streaming services were. So I think that based off of, what they were able to collect and pull from, whatever they had from their entities, seemed like it was a little hastily put together, but probably went in saying, we have all this great content with NBC shows, and acquired some other types of, TV and movies. And then with the WWE network, that's what they're getting, as you can get so much content really for a good price. What, $6.99 a month? Like super, super cheap. Yeah.
Half the price of the old WWE network.
Yeah, but they're also then like, well, you're gonna come for the content. They're not even seemingly like that haste about fixing those types of nuances with the user experience.
They're too busy pulling out racist content or something, I guess. That poor intern that has that job, like,
oh God,
how rough would that be? To get this back to the actual conversation, it does beg a question of, did the rug get pulled out from underneath USA? What really happened there? Or NBC Universal? Did they just decide that it wasn't worth to combat TNT? Maybe TNT put out a better offer and NBC was like, I don't want to match that. And so here we are in this kind of interesting, ironic thing where maybe we're seeing Dynamite move, though. Who knows? Maybe the NHL maybe the game of the week won't be a Wednesday game.
Who knows?
It's not like the NBA. The NBA, I think, has more sway. Obviously.
Yes. And this won't be happening until October. That's when apparently the season starts. So there is time. It does leave you to kind of beg the question, especially as AEW has stated many times that they're not here to compete with WWE.
Well, that's a lie.
When the Wednesday Night Wars first started, AEW announced Dynamite first, and then NXT came out. And so, there's fans who say, you know what? WWE pulled out first. They're the ones who initiated this by specifically airing content on the same night at the same time.
Right.
If AEW were to make a move to Tuesdays, now they're kind of following again, and they're resetting this up when they wouldn't have to. But it seems like they would want to, because that fueled a lot of that ego and a lot of that content, and it's almost like they would need to continue that with in some way that competition with WWE, because it does seem like, as much as they have publicly stated they're not in it for competition, it has become part of their identity.
I still, day one, Cody smashed a throne with a fucking sledgehammer. And from that moment forward, I take nothing that they say about competing with the WWE seriously. Even on a micro level with NXT. You know, if that's the battle they want to have, go for it. They've got the internet wrestling community on their side. Like it's just clear. Like, to the extent that Dave Meltzer this week, in talking about ratings, talked about how AEW outperformed everything categorized as sports, but the and not counting, and that meant not that it beat Raw, but that he made the big point to be like, but Monday Night Raw wasn't listed as sports. So it was like they outperformed everything except for the big, like, Raw and SmackDown. Like, okay, it just doesn't really mean too much. And the audience, I still need to see growth out of the audience. I need to see more eyeballs on the product for me to ever believe that there's any level of a war here. And until that happens, you know what? Vince McMahon is laughing his way to the bank left and right. I mean, I literally, right before the show, finished listening to Vince talk about Roddy Piper after this week's biography episode. Yeah. So he's got me there. This isn't going, you know, it's not going to go anywhere. The war is imagined, and yet people will keep fighting it. And yeah, I think that's all I got to say about that.
I mean, we'll see what happens with AEW. I think now that's the bigger question: is where is AEW going to land? And in some ways, the natural choice when you look at the other days available is Tuesday, unless Thursday's an option. But then that, you know, and we'll get into in a second actually about Impact. Then Impact has to move again. Like, I feel so bad for Impact and all this because they've literally been Impact. They've literally been on television every day of the week since they've started, like literally every day of the week. But in some ways, it works with their content flow since they already have content on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays. They could switch what they do on Dark around with Dynamite. What, I don't know. There's a lot of things that could leave it up, but you know, it does leave a lot of people speculating that the war may not be over. But if it's not, if they do move to Tuesdays, to me it does feel like they're looking for the fight. They want the fight, and they kind of need the fight. And if that's kind of your motivation behind it, or if that's a big driving force where now you're following the WWE, we all know what happens. We've seen that story far too many times. Nobody wins that game.
Oh, no, so, nobody beats Vince. So, at least nobody has yet. History. So, yes. We'll have to wait and see what happens. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we will talk about Impact Wrestling. Poor little Impact Wrestling. And Kenny Omega's big win this past weekend. You're listening to the Babyface Heel Podcast on the Chairshot Radio Network, a part of the Chairshot.com.
Breaking up is hard to do, but when it comes to your wireless carrier, you should have left a while ago. You're over the big three carriers. You deserve better. Xfinity Mobile. Now you can get unlimited with 5G included for just $30 a month on the nation's fastest, most reliable network. So break free from the big three and save with Xfinity Mobile.
Take the savings challenge at xfinitymobile.com/mysavings to see how much you can save when you get Xfinity Mobile and Internet together. Reduced speeds at 20 gigabytes per line. Most reliable based on Root Metrics U.S. report. Results vary, not an endorsement.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey folks, PC Tony here. Thanks to our new partnership with Angry Lemonade, you can save 10% on physical products and digital commissions using the promo code Chairshot. Head to angrylemonade.net to check out their amazing catalog of products and services. Use the promo code Chairshot to save 10%. That's angrylemonade.net.
All right. Too slow once again as I try to splice these commercials up, so that we have two commercial breaks instead of one. I could next time. I'm just going to have you recite. Are you looking for the bad? And you'll just have you do the
Give me the reader. Give me the reader. I'll do it live.
No, it was my
fault. We'll do it live.
I actually don't have readers. Sad. I have readers, like glasses, but nothing so professional as that. Okay, so this past weekend, TNA had itself a little pay-per-view.
I thought you call it TNA.
Oh, sorry. Impact Wrestling has itself a little bit. It's funny.
We'll talk about that in a second. Like it will always be TNA for many, many people.
You know, I listen to a lot of the Conrad Thompson podcasts, and this week as I plug another podcast network, and Greg cringes, but him and Bischoff were talking about the terrible TNA name and like just what it implied and what it meant and all of that. And it is, you're right, it's so ingrained in my brain. Like it's just, that's all I've got. So, but yeah, Impact Wrestling, I'm sorry. They did just have themselves a pay-per-view, Rebellion. They had a main event involving a champion versus champion match where AEW champion Kenny Omega took on Impact Wrestling champion Rich Swann. And as often predicted, repeatedly talked about on the show, Kenny Omega defeated Rich Swann and is now the Impact Wrestling champion. He's got 3 titles now because he's got the AAA title as well. And okay, so I'll turn this over to you. Is this, as Greg said, oh no. Are you still with me? There you are. Your face froze. Did I freeze?
Yes. Your face froze. Now repeat the question.
So where did I leave off? What was the last thing you heard before I disappeared?
Just something that Greg said, and I don't know. Oh, I mean, that's usually what it's like when Greg says something. I don't pay attention, but
is it like, as Greg said, this is one big vanity project for Kenny Omega and an ego stroke for AEW to kind of pick on Impact, or does Impact get any sort of rub out of this? I guess that's the real question is, what's next for Impact? What does this do for the Impact brand? Because we know what it does for Kenny Omega. He gets to stand triumphantly with 3 belts around him now as he works his way toward the Ultimo Dragon look. What does this do for Impact?
You know, it's a good question because I think leading up to this, this did feel very one-sided with Impact really doing all of the legwork to promote this match. In hindsight now, though, you looking at it, there were some benefits to this that Impact did receive as far as the publicity. They are getting all the publicity behind this now. They got all of the pay-per-view buys. And we have to admit, there were people who watched into Impact for the very first time because Kenny Omega was on this pay-per-view. And so they did get that publicity. They did get the extra attention. It's been all over the internet and social media as well. It does do something for, I think what it helps, or it does in a way that maybe we don't really know or won't fully understand, but it's this dual thing for me where I feel like the Impact Championship is now both devalued and elevated. One, because it feels kind of like a prop for this story of Kenny Omega collecting all of these belts. That also includes the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, which they did reactivate and create a unified championship or unified champion, but they were never truly unified. And that too makes it feel like a prop. But it's elevated when you think about, Kenny Omega, one of the most popular and skilled wrestlers in the world, now has this title. I think for me, it's going to be kind of what happens with it. What is this reign going to look like? That's how, for me, where this thermometer or where this scale is going to change. Because if it's really just treated as a toy, as something that isn't respected or valued, then it's going to really look bad for Impact. But if he truly honors it and, somehow even defends it once or twice, then I don't think it's a bad deal at the end. When you think about it, Impact has dealt with not having their champion quite some time. That was last year when Tessa Blanchard left the company and she had the title with her. They've had programming not surrounding the World Championship, and they've been able to do it okay. So I think that that's still possible for Impact to do on a short-term basis and come back from it and recover. I do think whoever ends up beating Kenny for the Impact titles will be a made person, and I think that will be the big payoff. But it's still seemingly in the unknowns for me yet. Even though we've come to this milestone of Kenny winning the belts, to be honest, I'm still unsure about what this means for the company and what it means for Impact until whether we see this on AEW television and he has all of these belts, or, how this helps put over the next person.
Well, it's about the story that they tell, right? Like that's basically what I'm hearing you say. It's going to sound, I don't know if it'll sound crazy. I honestly feel like Kenny Omega needs to hold the TNA World Championship for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And
interesting.
And be a champion that is like, and who knows what his schedule is and what he can actually work and what they'll actually do. But if he is able to be TNA World Champion for say 6 months to a year, which in current modern wrestling times, like that's forever. 6 months
that's a long time.
Forever as a champion. A year, even longer. And they continue with this AEW superiority narrative that just runs throughout Impact with this whole, thing, whether it's Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone popping up and running down the company, or, everything that's going on with Don Callis and all of that. But if you have Kenny, the AEW standard bearer / Impact champion, running roughshod over the company, that made person then can be created and built for a big victory to then be the flag bearer for Impact. And it could be done. It could be a better payoff than the Sting over Hogan payoff if it's done right. Now, is it going to get the kind of numbers that something like that did? Obviously not. But one of the greatest storylines in WCW during the Monday Night Wars was Sting as the hero who was going to unseat Hogan. And then that moment happens at Starrcade, and it's supposed to be huge. Now, WCW fumbled the football and made Sting look like a goof, and, because he wasn't tan enough or he was out of shape or whatever's going on with Sting's life, who cares? They fumbled the football on that with Hogan and Sting, and it took away what could have been a huge run for Sting. I think if they do this with Omega and build a guy to be the one to chase Omega and bring him down in 6 months to, dare I say, a year, that's a great story. That is a great redemption for Impact. That is a great redemption for, even if it's Rich Swann, which I don't think it will be, but that could tell a story that would be like, okay, this did some good for Impact. Because if Kenny Omega leaves and just goes Casper, like you said, those eyeballs are going to go away. And you got to keep those eyeballs around.
You do. And I think they could even do that on a short-term basis. The next big pay-per-view that AEW is running is Double or Nothing. And if they could have the Impact / TNA World Championship being defended at that level, that's going to be great crossover appeal. And that's going to make, anyone who's on that Impact roster, if they can wrestle on there. I think the challenge has been and will continue to be, it will make sense now that Kenny is the Impact World Champion, that the story is only kind of being told on Impact side, but it does continue to kind of lose its wear, and fans may not care on the AEW side because and it seems like it's multiple things, that there's maybe some technical obligations in which, AEW can't really promote it as much, that there's some financial things that apparently, AEW has invested in, and Impact can't financially invest in it as much. So that's why they're just really leveraging what they can with their TV time to do it. But, it's also thinking about, why is this happening? It is because of Kenny. It is this thought process of, he is, the belt collector. And so he's on this path to collect all of these belts. Why? To prove that he is the best in the world, that he is this wrestling god. And so these belts get used as a prop for that. And you wonder which belt is next. But you think about the AAA Mega Campeon, that hasn't been defended, mainly too because AAA hasn't been able to run very many shows. But you're also not going to see, it hasn't been mentioned on AEW television. Hell, you barely even see it. And that's not being defended on AEW television. I predict the same with maybe the Impact and TNA championships. Maybe we'll see it this week as a prop, or maybe we see it, on a table backstage. But when it comes to him coming out to the ring, it's always going to be focused on the AEW title. And I think that is where some precious airtime gets lost. And whatever that fifth belt is, or the next belt, it kind of devalues it, in the sense that this is all being built up to put over one person. And you think about legacies of the belt. Of course, the belt doesn't make the man makes the belt, or the title. But in this case, these titles are being used to elevate someone to this godlike level. And do we need that in pro wrestling right now? To be honest, I don't think so.
No.
The Kenny's talent speaks for itself. He doesn't need all of these championships in order for us to know that. We know he's that talented. It's the matches and his competitors and the stories. That is what will get people to really see that, not how many belts he has.
Right. And that's where it goes back to that vanity project question that we talked about before. Is this really just an ego stroke for a wrestler? And maybe it is. I mean, it is to some degree. But, because it's disingenuous to say that, I want all these belts because I'm amazing. It doesn't smack of ego a little bit, but we'll see. And hopefully we're wrong. And that it's not going to just be a focused on AEW thing. Hopefully it's going to do something to keep Impact and build some momentum and elevate that company, which, you joked about it, but has been moved around, has been the little engine that could for longer now than I think WCW has been in existence. It's been it's so many different models and ways, and it just keeps going and it keeps trying, and it's got the wrestlers to do it. It's actually not a bad 2 hours of television either. If you go and check out an episode of Impact, it's solid stuff. If I could get DirecTV to stop recording both the original air and the replay, no matter how many times I tell it, first run only DirecTV, I don't need 2 copies. I don't need 4 hours of Impact. Thank you.
Apparently you do.
No, I do not. What's going on? Did you drop the mic?
The mic. I was going to do a mic drop, and then I said no. Too early for that.
Too early? Cool. Well, what we'll do then is, as you get yourself settled back in, I am not going to play a second commercial, because when I idiotically stopped that commercial, it then started the whole set over again, and I don't want to be stupid and play through that twice. And so that, kids, is why you are not getting a second commercial break.
Promotional consideration.
Just kidding.
Now we know.
That's what I was trying to play.
And knowing is half the battle.
And the magic is lost when I try to give the lesson and then do the G.I. Joe thing. This is what we miss you, Greg. All right, I'm sorry. We just can't do it without you. You're so much better than us. Ego stroke, ego stroke, ego stroke. You're amazing. The end.
Yeah, I mean, he's almost like he's a podcast collector, not a belt collector, but a podcast collector.
That's true.
Yeah.
So we will just segue right into the Babyface Heel portion of the Babyface Heel podcast and talk about a a wrestler I think that we all have a great deal of respect for and appreciate, and is somebody who has straddled both the lines of heel and babyface in their relatively brief time up on the main roster. She has her own joke here on the Babyface Heel Podcast, LOL Charlotte wins, and that is the one, the only Charlotte Flair, the daughter of the Nature Boy, the dirtiest player of the game. It was funny. During our WrestleMania build-up, I rewatched I'm Sorry I Love You, and Charlotte's, in the audience. She looks like a completely different human being. Like, it's mind-blowing. And if you've ever, I can't remember if it's her, like, she did like one of those behind-the-scene like documentary things with WWE where she talks about what prompted her to pursue wrestling and her relationship with her brother, with Reed, and his passing, and how that kind of made her take the final step forward. But she has been a mainstay and a flag bearer. I think that's about the third or fourth time I've used that phrase today on the podcast for the women's division in the WWE, whether it be SmackDown, Raw, or all of the above. One of the four horsewomen, so to speak. And so, I think that who we got? Do we like Charlotte Flair better as a babyface or as a heel? Yeah.
Man, well, and you're right, like her career hasn't been very lengthy as of yet, but she's already super, super accomplished. I think, 10-time champion between the mix of, NXT, Raw, SmackDown, and tag team champion. I mean, they're stacking them up, but that is because she is one of the most athletic and gifted women in the entire company, if not in really the world. She was able to translate her athletic background in volleyball and just someone who grew up playing sports and made that transition to wrestling. I think one of the areas that for her took the longest time was her identity as a wrestler. When she first started in NXT, she did not use Flair as her last name. She didn't have a last name. It was just Charlotte. Right. And as time went on, you started to see more of the nuances of her dad and using the last name and embodying the character of Ric Flair more and more. And at first it seemed like a hard sell. And I think that was more when she was first really becoming a heel. It was more challenging to see her as that because in NXT, she did have a good face run. But when you get really settled in, and a lot of it was then breaking apart from her dad and doing her own thing, she found her own heel footing. And that to me is when the magic happened. She used elements of what her dad was always great at in promos, but then started to do what made sense to her. And I think that blend worked out really well. So even now in her outfits and in her gear is always an homage to her family, but now it's becoming more her. And I feel like even now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about her is that she has made her triumphant return to Monday Night Raw, and already is just playing one of the best heel roles in the entire show and continuously is growing in that role. She's, now, I guess, somewhat manipulating Sonya Deville to uplift her suspension after a week and making a referee apologize to her even though she beat the crap out of him. Like, it's those things that I think she's really grown into as a heel that, for me, makes me believe and feel she is much better as a heel than she has been as a face.
Right. Well, you know what? One of the things you mentioned, her gear and her look. I noticed this the other day. She's all you talked about that homage to Rick. That's gotten smaller.
Yeah.
And small, and like one of the distinctive looks that she would come in with the robe was the big like peacock flare behind her head, right? Mm-hmm. Like the peacock feather look. Her newest look, you can barely.
Yeah, I mean it's a robe, but it's really more. It's like
anything.
leather.
It's almost like a vest.
Yeah, it's I like it. I think it looks.
Oh no,
really
it's a terrific look. I don't think that there's any question in my mind that heel Charlotte Flair is the best iteration. I completely agree with you. She has really made her own persona stemming from her father. And it's amazing to see, I don't know if amazing is the right word, but you appreciate it, right? Like you appreciate just the development that she's taking on. And this current iteration that we're seeing coming back to Raw, where she's like, look, I'm it in this division. Like, there is me and then there is everybody else. And you all know it. Like, this is basically what she's saying, right? Like, she is saying, like, I'm the top, I'm the cream of the crop, and she's not wrong. She is every bit the heart and soul and the best wrestler in the women's division that they have. And I don't care how much you like Rhea Ripley. I don't care how much you like Sonya Deville or Becky Lynch or Sasha. And I love Sasha.
Mm-hmm.
But Charlotte is the standard. She is the gold standard. And she is her character every bit knows it. She's gonna let you know it, and she's not gonna stop until she has what's hers again. And she is, standing there with that belt around her waist. Answer to your question, 10 singles championships. She was the last Divas champion, as well as 4-time Raw Women's Champion and 5-time SmackDown Women's Champion. So that is quite the load. But yeah, I don't even think there's much debate here. I think that once she showed her talent for talking that she got from her, like that she came by honest, years of watching her father, I'm sure, working with her father, the training that she's had, she's competent in the ring, and she is a larger than life personality, and it really shines through when she is doing her own take on the dirtiest player in the game. So
yes,
I think that's what it is. I think we've called it. Charlotte Flair, heel. And with silence.
And the silence drove the crowd mild.
It did. And I didn't even have they are disappointed in us. So they'll boo for a second. Sorry, we'll do better next time. There you go.
There we go.
We promise we'll do better next time. So I don't have a 3-minute warning topic unless you have a 3-minute warning topic. I know last week we sang the song, and this week we didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of feel like we should have a 3-minute warning topic just to be able to sing the song again.
No,
yes. Well, actually, you were talking about it. We can briefly go over the Roddy Piper A&E documentary, because I watched that as well and loved it. So
you've got 3 minutes and we're out of here.
3 minutes and we're out of here. The clock is ticking and
we're in the clear.
We got 3 minutes and we're out of here.
There we go. We're terrible. I forgot to be like, all right, gentlemen, you have 3 minutes, so you better make it good. We left off Eric Bischoff, so yes. But that's okay. So A&E is doing, and clearly in conjunction with WWE.
Yes.
A quote unquote Legends biography episodes. I missed the Stone Cold Steve Austin one. I've got it set on my DVR to record. I think on Wednesday is when the next replay is. You kind of look in your channel guide and you're like, there it is. But I watched the Roddy Piper one this evening before the show, and it's the family stuff is what really gets me when watching these things, is when family members are talking about Roddy's presence or lack thereof, and what that meant to them. Seeing his wife and how emotional, obviously she got, that he passed away in his sleep, and that she was just glad that he was home when he passed away. Like that, it just gets you. And you're like, wow. And then for me, watching his career, like as they show just moments and highlights from his career, it's just like you sit there and you shake your head and smile, and you're just like, damn, he was so good.
Yeah.
He was so good. And whether it was Gift of Talk, he had his own distinctive brawler style in the ring that was special to see. But man, it's amazing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I've watched both this one and the Stone Cold documentary. And what both emphasize, and I think we'll continue to see in this, is how challenging it is to be a professional wrestler when you're on the road hundreds of days out of the year, how it impacts your family. He tended to go a more compartmentalized route where he would purposely take some extra time away from his family in between travel, so that way he can kind of decompress and get back to being himself instead of the character. And I think that's also a sign of how ingrained he was, and how a lot of the best characters aren't really characters. They're an extension of people's true personalities, but that when you live it, quote unquote, live in the gimmick, you're in that persona all of the time, that when you then have to shift gears into a different component of your life, especially with family, it's not something that you can switch on and off. And I think that is a theme that we may continue to see throughout the series. But one in particular with Roddy Piper, that was a part of him, even though that wasn't completely him. The loudmouth, outrageous, blunt, creative, driven man that he was, that was him. That was all a part of what was going on in his mind, but it did have an impact on his family. But it also was, especially his family in particular, really was aware of that and knew that and understood that, and seemingly, really did try their best to work through that, even knowing, man, the one scene that got me was when they were showing the clips of the NWO beating up on Roddy Piper after he had the hip surgery and the scars and all of that. And it just, man, as kids, I can't imagine seeing that happen to your dad, and like how that just changed for them. Like they just stopped watching for a while.
Such an interesting perspective, because watching that in the moment as a fan in the late 90s, because I was in college and I remember watching that scene. I remember being like, whoa, this is great stuff. And being like, this is huge, and not really thinking about how that impacted the family. Yeah. That now I kind of look at it as like, damn, like who thinks about that? And, and it's not like Roddy went in with his eyes closed and didn't know that they were going to do that. But it seems like his family might have been a little in the dark about it.
Yeah. And it's also just the physical, what you sacrifice physically. And they talked about that too, about, his injuries and just going for years and years and years. And that, just impacted, as his home, his health, and ultimately down the road, his family thought, what helped contribute to his unfortunate passing is just a combination of so many things. But you're right. In the moment, too, you look at it as a fan as one thing, but hearing all of these insights from friends and family about, all of these, really what was happening behind the scenes, whether it was, the famous matches, like what they talked about WrestleMania, and the war to settle the score, his going to Atlanta and working there, like being able to hear those insights from people and what it was behind the scenes compared to what we saw on TV is just very, very fascinating, and something I just respect and admire for everyone involved in this series, but in particular this episode.
The hardest thing for me to watch in that episode was that final interview that they show where he can't put a thought together. And it's heartbreaking, because that's not an unfamiliar scenario for people. as they get older for whatever reason, whether it's, some sort of degenerative thing with their brain or just their body's wearing out and their mind isn't all there. And to see that was just, it's sad. Like, I'd never seen that interview before. Like,
no, neither have I.
I'd never seen that. So the only thing that I quibbled with a little bit is they talk about his controversy. They quietly ignored his biggest controversy.
Yes.
We didn't talk about WrestleMania 6.
And I was just like, so we're not going to talk about it? Okay.
We're not going to talk about it.
And it was a long episode, but you know what? I get it.
But again, it's the WWE's hand in putting this together, and they're going to put his best face for it. The other thing I can't stand is Hulk Hogan.
I know. When he was talking about how he was like having to go in quibble between, Roddy Piper and Mr. T and how no one, I'm just like, are you hearing yourself talk? Like, do you know who you are?
The one where years later where he's like Piper's like, oh, I could have made all this money with you. And I'm like, fuck you, dude. Stop telling that story. That's such a Hogan way of remembering something. And yeah, that's the reason I'm not looking forward to the Randy Savage biography, is because we're going to have to listen to Hogan's take on his version of history. And I just, no, we don't need to hear that. So they are good watches. People are watching. Obviously, I'm watching that. Obviously, I'll probably watch the Macho Man one too. Yeah. But
do it.
I don't know, man. I don't love Hogan on there. We know what we're getting out of that.
Yeah, if you know, you know, and it's just like it's a skewed point of history, but overall, really well done. I do enjoy them, and like you said, I'm definitely gonna be watching the Macho Man one, and probably all the rest of them.
Yeah, me too. So we're at 56 minutes and 30 seconds. Boom. Let's hear for us. So we're going to wrap this episode up. Remind everybody where they can find you other than on the Twitter, because you're not on the Twitter as the Twitterless heroine.
Correct. You can find me at the #Miranda on Instagram and Facebook. No Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. The #Miranda, # spelled out.
And you can find me on the Twitter at Wrestling Realist, and that is at WRESTLNGREALIST. You can catch Miranda and I every Wednesday here on the New Besties show, also known as the Babyface Heel Podcast. You can catch me every Monday afternoon on Bandwagon Nerds. This week we talked about all kinds of, Ray Cash talked about all kinds of stuff. He was a little dominant. He was very proud of himself. Yeah, he had a lot of words and he shared them. But we talk about all kinds of stuff, streaming services to movie trailers to the finale of Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Great stuff. This week's Nerd Review will be a review of the recently debuted Mortal Kombat film that's now playing on HBO Max, so we look forward to that. And that'll do it. Maybe next week we'll have Greg back, and he can properly edit and splice things like commercials into the shows properly and not accidentally replay.
You can follow Chairshot Media. Of course, the Chairshot.com and Chairshot Media at Chairshot Media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That way you get information on all of the podcasts that drops. Real quick, we are going to be recording an episode of the #Miranda show, which we're going to go more in depth on Impact Wrestling's Rebellion. More thoughts on Kenny Omega winning the championship. Probably a little bit more vulgar. Plus some of the more interesting aspects of it, including the new X Division champion, really even just some previews and thoughts about Slammiversary with Impact Wrestling playing some of the same cards that they did last year. So the #Miranda show, part of the Chairshot Radio Network, drops on Thursday, so make sure you listen to it and follow the Chairshot at Chairshot Media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Absolutely. And you can follow Greg DeMarco at Chairshot Greg as well, if you want, I suppose. Yeah. He'll be back next week I'm assuming, or hopefully he'll be back next week. He'll criticize my poor soundbite play. He'll feel jealous of our new best friend relationship, but we got to work on that T-shirt. That's a thing that must happen.
It's gonna happen.
In the meantime,
I know some people will get working on it.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. But in the meantime, thank you very much for listening to this week's edition of Babyface Heel Podcast. We'll catch you next Wednesday on the Chairshot Radio Network, a part of the Chairshot.com.